accurate reading, and a lot of other instruments, for them to function correctly, need this input. If that input doesn't come, we won't get, that instrument won't work, basically, because it's not getting the information. So we were dispatched with one radio altimeter not working. So now, in the minimum equipment list, it says that 3 radio altimeters are given to you on the aircraft. You can go, provided 2 are serviceable. So you can proceed. So, you know, that's how it works. So
conscious decision to...
Yeah, it's a decision as
is something quite normal.
It's quite a normal thing, because they'll have multiple, like these radio altimeters, there are multiple other types of instruments. If one doesn't work, the other 2, if they work, it's fine.
And as far as the aircraft type goes, the 777 itself has, unless I'm wrong, it has a very good safety record. I think
oh yes.
1,500 or so flying, and very few incidents or accidents, so to speak, in probably, what, 25 years?
There's been, besides the Malaysian ones that have happened, there's been no loss of life on 777. They've had hull losses, where the entire aircraft has been destroyed, but nobody has lost their lives on a 777. Besides Malaysian, which just disappeared, and the other one was shot down.
Both the Malaysian.
Yeah, which is now something which has got nothing to do with the aircraft itself.
Yes.
You know.
Okay, so going by the conversation of the ATC with your aircraft, what I realized was when you appeared over New York, JFK, which was your original destination, the John F. Kennedy Airport, you decided the first thing which happened was a go-around.
That's right.
Yeah. So how and why did that happen, and what is a go-around, and why do you need to do it?
Okay, so basically a go-around is executed because you can't continue with the landing. So it's like a safety measure that's built in. If you cannot, for some reason, if the aircraft is not stable, if it's not on the correct height that it should be, if it is laterally displaced from the runway, and there's not enough time to correct for it, the pilot will execute a go-around and try the approach again. So I'll have to just explain to you, what an ILS is. Basically, the instrument failures that we had on board would have been fine if the visibility was okay. But what happened in New York, which no one could have predicted, and we didn't know when we left Delhi. We get the weather for New York, what it's expected to be. It was all fine. But by the time we reached there, once we reached American airspace, we saw that the what we call the ceiling, like a ceiling that you have here, that is the cloud base, was extremely low. So it was at 200 feet, and it was overcast at 200 feet. So that means you can't see anything till the aircraft breaks out at 200 feet over the runway, basically. So 200 feet is, it's like if you can see the runway in front of you. Before the runway, there are just these lights that lead you into the runway. They're like strobe lights that help you, guide you in. Typically, you just see these lights. You're over those lights when you break out at 200 feet. To land with a minima, a ceiling like this, you have to have the ILS. There's no other way it's virtually impossible to land this aircraft without the ILS functioning. Now, what the ILS is, the full form is, it's an instrument landing system, and it consists of 2 parts, 2 main parts. One is the localizer, which guides the aircraft. It's basically the center line of the runway is extended, and the aircraft will follow that. And from the ground, it will give you indications whether you're to the right or to the left, and then the pilot will make the corrections to be on the center line. It's very, very accurate, and it will bring you right down onto the center line of the runway. The other component of that is what's called the glide slope. That will give you the height you should be at. So it's like a continuous descent that has to happen all the way to 50 feet over the runway threshold markings. So these transmitters are placed near the runway itself, and they send signals to the aircraft. In our case now, what happened is that these signals are being sent to the aircraft, but because of the failures that we had on board, the aircraft is unable to pick up these signals. So we have no way of knowing whether we are going to be to the right, to the left, where we are going to be when we break out of the clouds. And then when we can see the runway at 200 feet, it's too low to maneuver the aircraft. If the runway is to our left or the runway is to the right, by the time you turn the aircraft, you can't. These aircraft are massive. The wingspan is huge. You cannot bank these aircraft at such low altitudes. The engine clearance from the ground is very, very low. There's high chances that it will scrape, the runway lights, edge lights, anything. At the same time, when you break out at 200 feet, it's not like you can fly level and then correct yourself and align yourself. You have to keep descending. And 200 feet is very, very short. It's just a few seconds and you should be on the ground. So for that to happen, you have the ILS, which is so accurate that it will bring you over the runway, and you should be at that point. At 200 feet, it's basically just so that you can see that the instrument landing system has done its job. If it has not done its job for some reason, then again you will go around. So for some reason, if the ILS has malfunctioned or something, you will go around. But 99% of the time, it's very accurate. Now in our case, what happened was, the signals are coming from the ground because all the other aircraft are landing, but our aircraft is not picking up these signals. So what do we do?
So at what point did you realize? So this is when, after you did the go around, I think at that time I remember hearing that that's when you informed the air traffic control that your radio altimeter has failed, your ILS has failed, your APU has failed.
Yeah.
So you had multiple failures, and what was going through your mind at that time?
No.
What do you do next?
Okay, so let's just rewind a bit. So now I've just explained a bit about the ILS, which is a very, very crucial thing in weather conditions like this. Like I'm saying again, if the conditions, if you didn't have clouds and your visibility is fine, there's no issue. You can just see the runway and you can land. But here you can't see anything. So typically what they do is they bring you in and make you intercept the localizer, which gives you your runway center line. Basically intercept your runway center line at about 14 miles, which is what he gave us in New York this time. So the first time we realized that something is not right is at that stage, and that is about 3 minutes to go for landing. 3 or 4, 3 miles a minute that we fly. So it was just a few minutes. So basically what happened was the aircraft, we have a mode where we arm the localizer, and when the aircraft intercepts that, it locks on and it turns green. So it tells you now that you're on the localizer, because you can't see anything outside. It's just like you pretend it's just completely white. It's white outside. There's nothing you can see. There's no reference to any horizon, height, buildings. There's nothing you can see. It's just white outside. So this instrument will tell you now that you're on the correct localizer. Now when that happened, what happened with us was that localizer, instead of being green, an amber line comes through it and says that now I'm not working properly, and the aircraft will continue flying on the last heading that was given to it. So this is the center line, and you're coming in this way, you just continue going that way. And in New York, there's a parallel runway on the other side where there's other aircraft movements going on. So you can't go into his side, So what we do is that has to be corrected now, because the indication has come that it's not able to capture the localizer. So we have a mode called heading select, where we select a heading and we turn back to the localizer, which is what we did. Now it goes into like a degraded mode. We have another mode which is called LNAV and VNAV. LNAV is, the full form is lateral navigation, which will be like a localizer kind of a thing, which will get you to the left or the right of the runway, but it's not a precision approach. It will bring you somewhere near the runway. So that is your lateral, it will guide you laterally. Whether you should go to the left, go to the right, it will try and bring you on the localizer. The other part is vertical navigation, which will give you the height that you should be at a particular distance, which is basically, it's going to try and follow the glide slope. So and that's what we did. We took the LNAV and we took the VNAV because we didn't have the ILS. We used LNAV, VNAV because the safest part of this entire approach is the approach funnel. So you're not in conflict with any other traffic. We also had another failure called TCAS, which is a traffic collision avoidance system. So in these busy airspaces, if you come close to some other aircraft or whatever, it will give you a warning, and it will tell both the aircraft either one to climb, one to descend to maintain separation. It's normally done by ATC, but there have been many instances where aircraft come very close to each other, and the TCAS then kicks in. But ours was not working.
Let me interrupt you. So you're actually flying without TCAS. You're flying almost blind. Almost blind, right? So
TCAS, but TCAS will it just prevents a collision from happening. It's a collision avoidance system.
So was the ATC helping you out in this?
So ATC's primary job is to keep all the aircraft separated from each other.
Yeah.
So that's his primary function. But there are instances, especially in busy airspaces like this, where you have a lot of traffic, which could come in your way. So the idea was to remain in that approach funnel. So you should be somewhere there, and not get into the path of any other aircraft or anything else in that vicinity. ATC is monitoring you. He knows that you're roughly following the ILS. At that time, we hadn't told him anything because we ourselves were trying to figure out what was going on. Also, we had a lot of spurious warnings coming, which is a loud oral warnings and visual warnings. They're there are different levels of warnings, and this is like a red warning, which is the loudest. It like tells you like if your landing gear is not down, there's a very loud alarm going on in the cockpit, and a visual thing telling you configuration gear. Those kind of red warnings are designed to make the pilot just act. So you can't think at that point. It doesn't allow you to think because the warnings are so loud. You just have to act. If it tells you something about your flaps, about your gear, you just have to do that thing depending on what the warning is. But we had a spurious warning. So there was a lot of instrumentation problems going on over there, so it's very difficult now to concentrate on what's happening because this warning keeps coming. So we have the first officer I had